A lot of people look at me and my wife, who's also an entrepreneur, and say, we really envy you, but what we can't believe is how brave you both were.
Chris Rensell left the London Stock Exchange after nearly a decade in high finance to chase a dream most would call crazy, becoming a chef. That leap led him to co-found Pasta Evangelists, a pasta delivery startup that grew from a bootstrap idea to over $36 million in annual revenue, later acquired by global food giant Barilla.
What was the real moment that, actually pushed you away to walk away from finance actually?
One day, I just realized it wasn't working. It was not right for me at all. I actually took some time out and said, I'm going to have a think at 40 with a young family at this stage in my career. What is it I want to do for the next stage of my career? But the advice I got was make your hobby your career.
In this episode, we talk about starting over at 40, turning passion into profit, and building one of the UK's fastest growing food brands.
If you're going to have a 50 or 60 year career, for goodness sake, make sure you enjoy it.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. Today's guest left the London Stock Exchange to become a chef and ended up co-founding one of the UK's fastest growing restaurant brands. Chris Rensell is the co-founder of Pasta Evangelists, a pasta delivery business that went from bootstrap startup to 36 million plus in annual revenue and eventually got acquired by global food giant Barilla. Chris didn't just pivot careers. He wrote the playbook from working in high finance to training at Leytonstone Culinary School, from rolling pasta in Leytonstone to opening 50 plus restaurants and dark kitchens across the UK. He has built a business that blends brand, data, and obsession with quality. In today's episode, we talk about starting over at 40, why Pasta Evangelists avoid traditional fundraising routes, how Chris thinks about team, tech, and customer experience, and what it's like running a giant dinner party for tens of thousands of people every week. Hey, Chris, welcome to the show. Great to have you here today.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for having me. Very excited about the chat.
Fantastic. Let's start off. You went from the London Stock Exchange to culinary school. What was the real moment that actually pushed you away to walk away from finance actually? Let's start from there.
It's funny you should say it as a walk away moment. So a lot of people look at me and my wife, who's also an entrepreneur, and say, we really envy you, but what we can't believe is how brave you both were. But there's a kind of private backstory that, yes, we were brave, but also we felt we didn't really have much other sane option at the time. So I, as you shared in the intro, worked for London Stock Exchange for 8.5, 9 years. Really, really enjoyable, hugely shaping time in my career. I left that role and I did another couple of roles in finance. I just found myself in the wrong job at the wrong time. Yes, and we're still working with fantastic people. It just wasn't the right thing for me. Long hours, starting my career, really being probably 10 years behind where I would have been if I'd stuck to my original path as a consultant. So one day, it just realized it wasn't working. It was not right for me at all. And I guess the critical moment was, rather than then bouncing straight into trying to apply for a strategy or corporate development job in a bank, which is what some of my colleagues did, I actually took some time out and said, I'm going to have a think at 40 with a young family at this stage in my career. What is it I want to do for the next stage of my career? And that was the big moment. I bought that time and gave myself permission to reflect on that. I got some help with the discussion, so I got a coach in to help me think through and process my thoughts. But the advice I got and ended up giving myself, but hearing from many others, including the coach, was make your hobby your career. Don't see your social life and you enjoy doing as separate from your career. Put the two together. My hobbies are rugby and cooking. At 40 and not having the skill set anyway, I wasn't going to become a professional rugby player. So cooking it was. So that's where the idea spawned for let's get into the food business. And that rapidly from there became, well, how do I test? Is this actually going to work? It's quite a big gamble of moving away from finance and commercial to food. What is it I want to do within this massive industry that is the food industry? And so then the idea came to go to cookery school, to turn my hobby of cooking for dinner parties for the family to my full-time occupation, if you like, as a student of food. So that's why I enrolled for the year at the Leith's Cookery School, to learn how to be a chef, to test does thinking about food every day and being under pressure for it rather than it being my release really work for me? And maybe come up with some ideas about what I'd do with it all at the end of the journey.
I love it. Now, the few things I want to ask you on that introduction. Did I hear you correctly? Your wife also started off on this entrepreneur journey at the same time as you, or was she always?
She's literally a year ahead of me, or a year and a half. I think she's just celebrated her 10th anniversary of her own business. So yes, we literally, the way I sometimes express it, there's a probably a bit old school now, but a marketing term called dinky. Double income, no kids. So we were that was us. We became zero income, one kid, another on the way, big mortgage, all within the space of about a year and a half.
Was that a midlife crisis?
That's why people look at us and say we were brave.
Was that a midlife crisis hitting early on?
I think a generation before, people would have said midlife crisis. Maybe I'd have bought a Harley and surfed around the countryside for a while.
Oh, great. Okay, so obviously rugby was not an option. You decided to go into cooking and pasta. That's how you found your thing out there. And, spreadsheets, pasta, they don't really go. So what was that?
That was a really interesting, genuinely really interesting debate with myself during that period before I enrolled at Cookery School, and as I started thinking about the job options, because for me at that time, the connection was about food. The celebration of food was all about cooking it and then seeing my dinner party guests enjoy it. That's what food meant to me at that point. And so it was a big reach from there, actually, to say, well, the only way to really enjoy food in that way is to be a chef, to run your own restaurant, build your own restaurant business. Again, at 40, do you really want to start on that journey of being a commie chef in a London restaurant and working your way up? That I had noticed. So I reached this conflict and had to address that problem. Well, how am I going to bring together my ambition, commerciality with this passion for food? What's the right sweet spot there? And it took a while to accept that it's not cooking the food. It doesn't need to be about that. So I can pursue my passion of food without actually cooking. And what's really meaningful to me, to my co-founders, Alessandro and Finn, and to everybody at Pasta Evangelists is we all have a very strong opinion on food. We all have a reason to be involved in a food business. It's a criteria I ask everybody I interview. Whatever the role you're in, I want you to have, and I expect you to have a perspective on food. And if you come in, whatever the role is, in a data role, in a customer success role, in a people role, I need you to have a passion for food in some way. It doesn't mean you need to be a cook who spent £20,000 on their education and taken a year out and changed their career. That's obviously off the scale. But you need to have a view. I like eating out. I like cooking this kind of food. It connects all of us in Pasta Evangelists to our mission, keeps us going every day through the good times, through the bad times. That's what I personally take from this is ultimately, everything I'm doing is about the quality of food that we're serving people. It's about that reward, as you said, of effectively, I'm organising a dinner party for 50,000 people every week now.
Yes. What's the Italian connection?
The Italian connection is initially through my business partner, Alessandro.
Okay.
The genesis story of Pasta Evangelists. After Leith, I tried out a few things. I was in a very entrepreneurial spirit. So I tried a couple of ideas of my own with food. They didn't really work out. I went and started contracting for a food delivery firm. And then the stars aligned when you're looking for these things. 2 days before the end of my contract with this food delivery firm, I got introduced to this guy with this idea for a pasta business. So we met in WeWork in Old Street on Wednesday evening.
Right.
Hit it off. Yeah, he had a great idea, great energy on sales, business development, vision. I've got all the finance, operations, strategy, data experience, and the passion for food. So we hit it off enough that the following Thursday, I was in Leytonstone in northeast London, sending out pasta meals with him. I was free because it was the end of my contract, and we haven't looked back from there. So there were two of us in October 2017 doing that, and now October 2016 rather, doing that. And now we've got 50 restaurants, 400 employees serving pasta across the whole UK.
I love it. Love it. And also you mentioned you had a coach. When in that journey of yours did you actually get a coach or a mentor?
In that career change point, as I decided I was going to pause my finance career at the beginning of 2014. That was the point at which I decided I wanted to get some help with thinking about, where was I going? Where did my career rather than life? I think what I was with was halfway between life coaching and career coaching. We say it was in a sense a midlife crisis, because I was at a point in life where my life dramatically changed, because I had a very, very young family. So I was looking at changing my career and trying to understand how would I fit my career and my working pattern around wanting to be a very present and very involved father. So it was part life coach, mainly career coach. And that was, so I worked with him for about probably 4, 5, 6 months as I just let my ideas generate. And then once I was on the path, cookery school, everything came together at that point. So I didn't feel the need to revert back from there. It served its purpose with
Excellent.
Great aplomb.
Yeah. And massive career shift. How did your wife support you? Did she say, get back to work? What was the kind of support system you had around?
Hugely supportive. So I was really concerned. So we're very supportive of each other, and from the start, as I alluded to, she'd gone through the same journey, a similar journey, a year earlier, to start pursuing her own career path, shaped by her and her own business. So we'd come together and agreed that was a good thing for her and so. There was a little bit of nervousness, I think, when I raised the same point with her the other way around, because it's one thing as a family to say, well, you've still got the earner in the steady job covering the mortgage and keeping the family fed, to then say, well, I kind of want to do the same thing. That's a little bit of a bigger decision than a family. She recognized how much she'd gained by putting herself on a path she really believed in, I think. So saw no reason not to support me. I think one of the positives from particularly having a first part of my career in finance is I was able to build up savings, which if I'd been working as a chef in a food industry as a first career and to go to finance, it would have been more difficult to go the other way. So we knew we needed to do the right thing by the family and look after the family, but we worked out our financial wherewithal to do that. We didn't have family holidays. We went shopping at the discount supermarkets and so on, but we planned it all and made sure the family could still prosper whilst we found our feet in these new careers.
Yes, and it has paid rich dividends right now. Talk to me about what are the top 3 values which have made you successful today?
That's a really good question. I think following my passion and my dream, that's really important. Even in the city, in finance, it's important. Although I didn't have the same empathy and connection through food, I'm still hugely passionate about the businesses I was starting and working for there.
So we got passion, empathy, and analytics. Obviously, this is the logical and the emotional side of it. Love it. So what does the first version of Pasta Evangelists look like?
So Pasta Evangelists V1. So what we started as a fresh pasta meal kit company. So at the time we started, end of 2016, this meal kit idea, Blue Apron in the US, HelloFresh coming out of Germany, Gusto probably just starting up. Gusto's probably about maybe our age, maybe a year or two ahead of us. Right. That was just developing, just really starting to take off as a marketplace, along with many other subscription products, subscription flowers, subscription gins, and so on. That model. So the reason we followed that model is it was something that was starting out. So it was trending and growing. So it's something of interest, and particularly of interest to investors as a new area with potential. It was quite an easy way to start a food business. If you start a food business as a restaurant business, you've got to go and find a load of restaurants, fit them out, commit to leases with no track record of trading or credit. That's a difficult journey to go out on to get your first restaurant open. If you start as a food manufacturer, you've got an immense learning curve. And I think this is probably the number one mistake that food businesses make is they start with making a wonderful food product.
Right.
That takes a lot of effort to make a product. Now, most business advisors and MBA lecturers will tell you want to find and create a market for your product, your service. That's the first place to start. So that's where we started, is we said, we're going to create a brand. We're going to build a customer base. what's the easiest, lowest risk, best chance of success way we can do this right now? So we said, we'll focus on that. We won't focus on making the food. We'll work with co-packers and partners to do that to start with. We won't focus on trying to deliver it. We'll work with the DHLs, DPDs,
Right.
and so on of the world to do that. And therefore, it kind of led us into that recipe kit model. Logistics in this country is very, very strong, really, really reliable, which is really important as a fresh food business because your delivery has to arrive the following day as scheduled. If it doesn't, it gets thrown in the bin. It's very wasteful, but that's for food safety, it has to because it has to be chilled. So the fact that there's a really good, really competitive logistics marketplace in the US means this in the UK means this delivery of fresh food became practical. Effectively, the Amazons and then Gustos and HelloFresh of the world have created this need and this service amongst the logistics providers. So we came in and enjoyed that. So it was the easiest way to get our product to market easily was in this recipe kit. What we needed to do was develop the brand, develop the recipes, get somebody to make them for us, and then pack it and get it sent out, dispatch safe to customers, and then do all the work with the marketing of building the customer base, learning from them, listening to their feedback and the recipes. So the reason we started a recipe kit business wasn't because our mission and vision was to be a vast pasta recipe kit business. Our mission from the very start has been to be the authority in fresh pasta and sauces. That doesn't talk about whether it's a restaurant, a hot delivery service, serving from a counter as we do in Harrods, or taking a recipe kit and cooking at home. It covers all of those possibilities. We just want to make sure you're going to get a wonderful, differentiated pasta experience because that's the mission of the business. That's the opportunity that we saw in the marketplace. The problem we're solving is pasta could be so much better than the stuff that people were buying in the supermarkets.
I love that one. So that's your USP. So basically, you've gone from pasta boxes to kind of restaurants. You've gone from local kitchens to, I think, national outreach, right? So what's been the most pivotal level up for that business, for your business, Momenta so far? Because you've really literally gone from delivering local boxes, right, to nationally.
Right, yeah. So there have been 3 or 4 pivotal moments. So the story of the business was recipe kits. But as I said, the mission is about authority in fresh pasta and sauces. So we always knew we wanted to try different channels and find. Our view was always, as long as we can deliver that customer promise of a premium pasta experience, then, and there's a path to profitability. As a startup, you have that luxury to invest in something, then we'll give it a go and we'll try these different channels. So we tried and started in the deliver at home, order direct from us recipe kits. We were having built that brand successfully for a year and a half, we were invited by Harrods to pitch when they reinvented their food hall and invited outside concessions into the fresh market food hall within Harrods. And we were successful in that. So our first branch out from there was to launch our concession in our corner in the fresh market. So we started selling the fresh pasta direct to cook at home and cooking people for their lunches in Harrods that could take away and eat directly. That unlocked getting a listing on Ocado, because once our Ocado buyer could see the product in Harrods, he understood the vision and it really hit him. And he literally came and stood in front of me and said, now I understand what the vision is, what the brand is about, because I can see it in front of me. I can see the pasta. Whereas just seeing the website, just seeing the delivery at home product doesn't bring it to life in quite the same way. So these things start to snowball. Well, we can do this apply this in other channels, and other people start to believe it and see it. We started hiring people. One lady we hired to help us with the recipe said, I remember her distinctly saying, I first connected with the business through Ocado. Suddenly you massively increase your reach and your relevance to people by doing this. So, and then but the biggest probably 2 pivots in the business as we look now, the first was in January 2020. We had our start of year strategy session as a leadership team. We'd been trying for probably a year to get a business going on Deliveroo and Uber Eats, but of the recipe kits. Afraid when you're on Deliveroo and Uber Eats, you're not looking for some interesting idea, cook at home pasta recipe kit. You're hungry. You want to be fed and as quick as you can. Now, maybe you want something a bit more ordinary and standard from takeaway, a pizza or a burger, but maybe also something a bit nicer, especially if you're working in the office on a Wednesday night rather than coming back home at 11 o'clock on Saturday night after a good night out. So we hadn't made this work at all. We said the reason is we've half invested in it. We've tried pushing the wrong product through these channels. We then tried doing the right thing of cooking it hot, but in our kitchen facility, food that we were already using primarily for making up our recipe kits. So they had to operate around those hours, only open some hours, open late if the recipe kits business was running late. Just didn't work. So we said one of the strategic imperatives for 2020 was let's properly commit to a hot food delivery business on Deliveroo and Uber Eats. So let's start by dedicating a kitchen and a chef team to that. So we made that strategic decision at the beginning of 2020. We'll all still remember, much as we might be trying to blank it out, what happened in March 2020. Yes. We literally just landed this strategy and opened our first delivery kitchen in Clapham in early March, so 2 weeks before UK lockdown. So that kicked off that business in a big way in two ways. Firstly, obviously, lockdown was a huge boon for food delivery, not just for our cook at home business as well as for hot food delivery. But the second really interesting and possibly the lucky out. People talk to me about, were you lucky to be there? We've worked really hard for 4 years to build and sustain the business together. So I don't put that down. And even people within our business say, oh, we're really lucky to be on the right side. Well, yes, compared to people who were furloughed or lost jobs, very upsetting over COVID. But we'd worked really hard for 4 years to have a business that was trading and established to take advantage of the COVID opportunities. So I'm really very forthright. People in the business or outside talk about that being a lucky moment, but it was pivotal. And the one thing I might treat as ironic luck out of it is we had to close that Harrods counter that I talked about. That meant we had a really experienced team.
That was during COVID.
Furlough, because Harrods was closed to customers. So we had to close down and shut because the whole store had to shut in common with all other stores, even Harrods. And it's amazing to think back what the world was like then. It was just unheard of. That meant we had a team of really experienced, bought into the brand people, brought into the brand, who were suddenly looking for, they were given the option of furlough, but they would rather keep working. So they actually became our kitchen team, and Veronica, who was our manager in our Harrods concession, became the manager of our Clapham restaurant. That was luck, because that meant that restaurant got set up brilliantly by somebody who understood the business, who understood how to cook and run a food operation. And from there, that takeaway hot food delivery business really has gone from strength to strength. So we opened that first kitchen in March. We had 7 of these delivery kitchens by the end of 2020 when Barilla bought the business, and at that point was 7. And as you say, we've now got 44 of these kitchens stretching from Bournemouth to Glasgow. So that was a really pivotal moment. That January 2020 decision and the subsequent really excellent execution of that through 2020. The second one has been more recent, which is about then taking that hot delivery onto the next stage, which is now our strategic focus, which is restaurants. So yes. Our first restaurant actually was launched in 2021, again in Harrods. So we operate the pasta bar in Harrods restaurant room as well. So we started and have been restaurateurs ourselves since that point. But our strategy from 2024 has been to move away from trying to grow the delivery-only kitchens, which we've really reached a top of them, a topping out point. Really, we have about 50 of these kitchens across the UK. Yep. That's really as many as we feel our brand can support. They're very reliant on the Deliveroo, Uber Eats distribution marketplaces because they're not brand we've bought on a high street, so we can't reach out to an audience ourselves very easily, and therefore they're really suited to large cities, university cities, where there's a natural audience of people on Deliveroo, where there's a decent selection of restaurants to justify that kind of marketplace function that Deliveroo and Uber Eats serve. If you're in a market town in Kent or Surrey or Hampshire, then there are lots of people who want food delivery, and want a good food experience, but there's probably just one row of high street restaurants.
Yep.
You're not getting a great service from a marketplace. There's no finding service
Yes.
from a marketplace. So what
Yep.
we found is we've pretty much hit the limit of those delivery kitchens, which is, well, how can we keep this business growing? It's working well. We're doing brilliant sales of this hot pasta. How can we build on that business? And the answer is actually fairly obvious and goes back to the conventional way food businesses have really been built, which is to build restaurants and then gain all of the dine out business as well as the delivery business. So that's been the mission of the business since 24, the strategic priority of the business since 2024. So we opened our first high street restaurant in Richmond in July 2024. It's just had its first birthday.
Oh, wow. That's just...
And yes, that's a mark. I was there yesterday, and it's notable how through its evolution. So I was there at late lunch. I walked in, and that same journey, I often go around back to time. It happens to suit me, and although it's downtime, so I don't see lots of customer, lots of activity, what I do is I get a great chance to talk to the team because I'm not actually bothering them when they're busy. So I'm often in that time. This is the first time I think I've been in, and at this odd time of day, 2:30, 3 o'clock, and found it really quite busy. So I've seen in the numbers as we built and got better, and the trading results got better. I know that it's getting busier even in odd day parts for dining, like mid-afternoon. But to walk in and see 10 a dozen covers at 2:30 in our small Richmond restaurant, amazing. And I walked back up. I did a couple of calls in the basement downstairs, came back up for what was then early teen time, and there's 3 or 4 families in there for tea as well. And the last time I was here, if I'd come in at 3 o'clock and gone out again at 5, I might have seen 1 or 2 tables.
Right.
That we can really see how that restaurant has come on, how it's really built as people have accepted it's improved. It's just gained a following locally with the families and the couples in Richmond. And so now we have, as we speak at the moment, we have a total of 7 restaurants that we operate. So Harrods, Richmond, then also in London, in Chiswick, in Farringdon, in Greenwich. We have a outlet in Manchester Airport that's been running since the end of last year, which is an amazing team, and they're doing an amazing job right now through the peak season in the middle of the summer holidays. And we've opened in the last month a restaurant in Guildford. So that's really exciting because that's our first out of London high street restaurant, and that's immediately absolutely smashing it. We're really excited about that because whilst it's a really important proof point for the brand that it can work across the whole country. There are definitely food and beverage brands out there where you can see 20 odd outlets in London and they almost don't exist outside because London has a level of wealth and a level of going out. Other big cities, Manchester, Birmingham, Edinburgh, Glasgow, have to some extent, but nowhere near the same velocity. So to have opened the restaurant in Guildford and created such a massive impact so quickly is really exciting for us in particular because that opens up, really proves the concept in a really different location from Richmond by the river or Greenwich by the Cutting.
Yes.
Those are great locations to be. Of course you win there. It's really important that we can show that we can win in this range of locations so that we can keep building that network with confidence.
A lot of so key pivotal moments when you went from moving from the kitchens to actually opening up high street restaurants. What is the strategy when it comes to finding new locations for restaurants now? So this 2024, July 2024, you started your first, right? So when you sat down as kind of executive board and looking at the strategy for Pasta Evangelist, talk to me about that. What's your kind of go-to strategy when it comes to new restaurants?
We found the great locations for Pasta Evangelists because we've got 50 of them in dark kitchens, and pretty much all of them work pretty well. So we already know only from a city or a neighbourhood basis where we need to be. So that's a good starting point on focus. What we've found and learnt, and it won't be news to those excellent people all over the restaurant industry and the retail industry who are already very focused on searching for sites and locations is that neighborhood is half at best of the question. Your specific location, very specific location, is really important. Sunny side of the street, non-sunny of the street, primary street, secondary street, really understanding that. So what we're really starting to get to now we've got enough restaurants in slightly different location that we can see how they respond and what Destination X may be missing that Destination Y has. Is we're really starting to nail in what is the perfect Pasta Evangelist location, and we're very open to using data to help us identify that. So we have our own sales data from our delivery kitchens, from our recipe kits that helps us locate the right areas and the right areas of focus. But then we've had to partner with localized footfall data providers, phone data providers, all these kind of different, they can tell you about movements of people at different times of day, because we specifically want footfall at 5 o'clock to 9 o'clock in the evening and all weekends. Now, we're not unique in needing that, obviously.
Yes.
Locations tend to come with higher rent, but that's now the levels. We know the locales very well. We're very clear on that, but it's actually about this is where we want to be, and then being able to act quickly when either that unit comes up, or frankly, being cheeky enough to walk into the unit if it's a local unit, or talk to the current tenants if they're corporate units and say, we're interested. Not everybody on the high street is doing brilliantly at the moment. It's then about showing the hunger to try and close and get those best sites for our brand.
Love it. Then let's go to, you were acquired by Barilla, the biggest pasta company in the world. How did that deal come about, and how has life changed since the acquisition?
That's a really good story, because that first deck, the first meeting with Alessandro in Old Street in 2016, it had at the start of the pitch deck established that point. So he took me through the start of the pitch deck. Here's the mission. Here's the team as it is so far. Here's what we could do on a business plan. And the plan is to build something to exit. That's the pitch to the investors, to make sure they have a point of value. And here are the businesses. Okay, so because F&B businesses, there's a really good market, great history of acquisition, because these are really successful conglomerate businesses, multinational, massive brands from Nestle at the pinnacle of it, Unilever, P&G. But the number one brand, the top left corner of that chart, when Alessandro first did it, had Barilla, because Barilla is the world's leading pasta company. It's the largest pasta company in the world. It operates the largest pasta manufacturing facility in the world. So that's for a pasta business, they were the number one potential acquirer. So what we did is we built a relationship with Barilla as just initially a working relationship. Then at one point, Alessandro and Finn, our other co-founder, attended a Barilla Entrepreneurship conference. Perhaps that was 2 or 3 years into our journey. So we just started to build those connections with Barilla. And then when we were on our fundraising round in 2020, we had an update with Barilla at that point, with the Barilla CEO. So we were connected at that level. But it was just from our side, we went into that call just as, this is just a trading update. This is where we're at, because we know we're talking as for potential future partnerships. So we presented, this is where we're at, where we're going. This is 2020. So the business has just grown by 5 times year on year. So it's obviously a pretty positive update. And at the end of that meeting, the Barilla CEO said, well, thank you, well done. Thanks for the update, really appreciate it. I think this is the moment this is the have-to moment for us to come in, because next time you're fundraising, you'll be too big for us. That's literally his words. It's one of these classic, there's this, in fundraising, people talk about go searching for fundraising, you'll get advice. Go searching for advice and you might find some fundraising. There's something like that. It's almost like we did that. We literally went into that meeting just to give the guy an update. I remember thinking at the time, well, we're really busy on this fundraising round. Why are we then going in for this chat? This is what we're doing. And it turned into a fundraising acquisition discussion out of the back of that. So literally a week later, we were talking to the Barilla CFO about organising due diligence. That's how quickly it went from an intro conversation to a real opportunity. So that was the pivotal moment, and one of the most pivotal moments in business history, no doubt, so far. And then when really important part of that getting to know each other phase, as well as the due diligence, was us to meet the Barilla family. So Barilla is still owned by the Barilla family.
Right.
So we went to Parma in northern Italy to meet Guido, Paolo, and Luca Barilla. And what was really important in that meeting is, whilst you can write whatever you like in contracts about tie-ins and earn-outs and so on, and board rules, we just struck an agreement in that in Parma that what the Barilla said to us is, we really love what you've done, the brand, the business, what you've built, the data. These were the things we presented: the food, the brand, the data we could get on our customers as a direct-to-consumer business. We explained what we were able to do with that. And they said, we really love what you're doing, but it's still early on your journey. And they're right, it was four years in. So, and the business really is still very dependent on the three of you as founders of the business. So we're very keen to take on and acquire Pasta Evangelists and partner with you, but only if you're part of that journey. So we need to hear and see from you that you are up for that journey. And we're able to say, absolutely, equally from our side, we're only 4 years in, so of course we want to carry on. We're building something really exciting. But we said, but what is really important to us is that it's our journey. We are directing how the business goes. So yes, we can give you our commitment, as well as signing up to the shareholder and employee and employment countries that embed this in contractually. But we can stare at you and commit, and height of COVID, bump elbows with you on our commitment to the business, as long as it is ours to direct and decide. What we're not ready is to become a small part of a global behemoth like Barilla. Yes. And so that's the deal we agreed. And to Barilla's credit, they have absolutely lived to that. So we're still able. A lot of people, when I say, wow, you've really got the best of both worlds. You've got that confidence and backing and brand association of Barilla. You don't have to go out and fundraise every 2 years anymore. I mean, amazing, the time and energy that's taken away from that. But you're still enabled and empowered to make the day-to-day and month-to-month and even year-to-year decisions about the business. That is the situation. That's the nature of our partnership. Barilla is incredibly supportive of us, and they've stood by that. Again, even as we've pivoted and changed direction, which has been amazing.
How long was it before the first conversation with the CEO to closing this particular deal off with Barilla?
4 months.
How long?
4 months. We had a first conversation mid-September. We formally closed on the 12th of January.
Love it. It's very important that we talk about that, right? So you had a CEO out here from Barilla who actually understood what you all were building, the speed at which he then moved forward, and the speed at which you all move forward. So talk to me about the lessons you all have learned. And then you'll have met the whole family, like Luca, Paolo, whoever is safe and not Parma. You'll have done all that in 4 months, and due diligence and acquisition takes so long. What are the lessons you've learned on both sides, right? From looking at someone from the Barilla family to the CEO of Barilla to, and your side too, three co-founders out there.
I think what's important, just as I talked about the relationship with Alessandro and whatever we may go through in the moment, there's these two really critical foundations which are pretty unshakable and therefore are steering us. I think we have the same thing with Barilla. I think the family business means they've made a really important personal commitment. It's a personal commitment by them to Pasta Evangelists. And so I think that's very meaningful, just as their name is on the product. So we feel that same passion at our tiny scale at the moment compared to Barilla. And so I just think there's a great alignment there within that kind of family business, even though it's just such a huge business and undertaking, Barilla. We have this similar outlook. We have a very, very great shared passion for food. So the Barilla brothers taste everything that Barilla develops in the same way that I attend every Thursday weekly tasting session in our pastificio,
Right.
facility. We share those values with the brothers, but also with the senior managers at Barilla. And so I think that's what keeps us really well aligned, despite that Pasta Evangelists is operating in a very different way by nature compared to the way Barilla, which is a huge global business with many thousands of employees, works.
Love it. So what started as a small point on the quadrant of a pitch deck in 2016 turned out to be really amazing. And you built it very well, right? Strategically or tactically, you had built a relationship with Barilla over a period of 3-4 years. Conversation with the CEO then led up to the acquisition, and in 4 months you wrapped it up. Congratulations to all of you out there. Now talk to me about now you're doing about 36 million plus run rate GBP. What key hires or systems helped you scale operationally without breaking?
At the moment, I'll be really honest with that. At the moment, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears and attention. Because we have pivoted direction, and because we have a really strong entrepreneurial attitude to get ahead with the minimum MVP, with a minimum viable product solution and get to market. One of the pains we carry is underneath the scenes, it's not always smooth, and we have to run to catch up with where the business is going. But as you point out, we're scaling, and particularly in our restaurant business, our restaurants are mainly at the moment being opened by franchisee partners. And that's forcing us to become more structured and more professional in our operations and in the underlying backbone of the business. So we're catching up, but it's always a race because we're always looking for the next opportunity as well. But we're starting to put in place now an infrastructure which suits that scaling. I think we're also strategically recognizing that we can't do everything and hope to do everything well. So just as that was a really strong strategic decision right at the beginning of the journey, when we decided we weren't going to make the food and we weren't going to deliver the food, so we're just going to focus on creating the brand and actually just putting the kits together and dispatching them. We're starting to remake that strategic focus decision by bringing franchisees into the system. It's a huge trust to get over again. I talked about the entrepreneur journey and letting others in letting somebody else in as a partner who doesn't work for you, who's your customer, is a really big step, but we've taken that step. And fortunately, equally on the other side, our franchisees have been prepared to partner with something that they know is not the finished, polished article yet. So they've been really supportive and open to come on that journey themselves. But we're starting to build out those systems to make sure it's scalable, because our ambition is to go from our 7 restaurants that we have at the moment to more than 100 in the UK. We're very confident there's a marketplace for at least that many Pasta Evangelists in the UK. Our pastificio, our pasta factory, can accommodate more than 100. It has capacity to supply more than 100 restaurants in the UK. So that's our ambition. So we need to make sure it all runs smoothly and doesn't need me logging on at 8 o'clock in the morning from my holiday to make sure everything's working at that point.
Yes, love it. Fantastic. And I want to talk about the pasta itself, right? What makes a customer fall in love with Pasta Evangelist? And how do you build that emotional connection into something as everyday pasta?
So we say pasta is an everyday staple, right? In southern Italy, they'd look at us like we're mad, some of the things we do. I think we try and ride a really carefully thought out path with the food between authentic Italian, which in itself is a bit novel, because what's the first pasta dish that everybody in the UK will think of? It's spaghetti bolognese. Now, bolognese is a real thing in Italy, not really the way most of us cook it. Spaghetti bolognese definitely doesn't exist. So you would not have spaghetti with a sauce like bolognese, because when you have a bolognese, a ragu sauce, you take a ribbon pasta, so the ragu pasta. So spaghetti bolognese, it's an anglicized hack. So we try and first off bring authentic Italian flavors and dishes, which in itself is a novelty, because that's not what we see a lot of in the UK. Then the other thing we try and do is we do try and bring a level of innovation that perhaps would break the rules in Italy.
Okay.
So, for instance, we're launching at the end of this month coloured gnocchi. So colour is a huge trend. If I walk out now in London, I will go past, we call them A boards, the boards that sit outside all the restaurants. Every single one of them will be showing our rainbow chai lattes or our rainbow range of macarons or whatever it is. Colour is the thing this summer, right? So we've asked ourselves, how do we do colour as Pasta Evangelists? And the thing we've tried a few things, we've got a few ideas, but the thing I'm most excited on by miles is our coloured gnocchi. They're absolutely amazing. So we have a super green gnocchi, 4 different green gnocchi. There's a dark green gnocchi with edamame. Right. There's a pale green gnocchi with an artichoke in it, and there's a couple of others in between. And the other thing we have is our rainbow gnocchi, which are pink, purple, orange, and white. So they're huge impact visually. It's massive. But the way we've done that, very important to the brand, is we haven't injected them with food colouring. We've used, just as when we make our pasta, when we make our green pasta, we make it with spinach. That's what you make green pasta with, right? When we make our green gnocchi, to get the different greens, we use different vegetables. When we make our purple gnocchi, it's with red cabbage to give it a natural flavour, which is really important. So we are bringing people new stuff because it's an interesting thing about Italy. I learned something about Italy, but we're also bringing real novelty and innovation. And we want to bring that because pasta, we talk about it being, it's maybe not quite the right word, but we talk about it being very democratic. Anybody pretty much can eat pasta, which means potentially we can appeal to a very wide range of people. Somebody very serious, the Roman businessman who puts his tie over his shoulder to eat his arrabbiata at lunchtime. To families and to families who just want to feed the kids with something they'll definitely eat, through to wanting to appeal to people who want to Insta their food. And so we need to, without trying to be everything to everybody, we can play around with pasta and cover all of those needs quite easily because everybody loves pasta.
I love it. I love that level of color. I would say color and connection out there. Definitely need to watch the space more. Talk to me. Food is very physical.
I think there's one specific PR moment in Pasta Evangelists history, which if you Google, you'll find it pretty high up in the YouTube link, which is Dragon's Den. So I think we'd done such a great job with setting up the brand. We were invited by Dragon's Den to pitch for them. So we didn't apply that. And you then go into an application, and again, quite a lengthy application because they do a mini diligence on you as well. It's quite hard work. But the critical point for us there is even when we went on Dragon's Den, we were probably already a bit too far down our path. We already had our first kind of professional investors involved, not just seed investors. So we weren't at a position where we were going to do the kind of deal the Dragons generally do, which is normally very early seed style deal, taking a large slug of equity for a very low price. But what was critical for us is that we got on there, made a bit of impact, but most of all, that when they tasted the food, they said it was delicious. So when Deborah Meaden tasted what Finn was cooking in the background and said, that is delicious, that was what happened. Now the fact that they said, no, we'll pass, and then it's branded Pasta la Disaster, is just then that reads more into there's no such thing as bad publicity.
Yes,
of course, it's become a real mockery, little bit of fun that we can have with that brand and with those people now. And that look at them now; these are the guys that've got 50 dark kitchens, and Barilla has partnered with the business. You passed on the biggest food opportunities that have ever been presented to you. But that's been the biggest single impact, and that's what we seek to do. What we recognize really well, I think, first is as founders, we recognize we've got a responsibility to advertise the business through our own PR efforts because that is an opportunity. But we've got, as I've said before, food is cool and interesting. It's interesting. Everybody can understand the conversation. Again, if we started a really clever hedge fund business, brilliant. We might be making out like bandits. It would be great, but not that many people will be interested in talking to you because it's not that exciting. So food is a cool business. Being in startups in the UK is cool and interesting and enviable for a lot of people. Again, the outside, we try and present all this wonderful, exciting journey, hiding the really tough times behind. And the third thing is, and we've talked about this already, our personal journeys are all individually very, very enlightening, empowering, inspiring. So it's a really great PR mix. So indeed, PR is really important to us as a business because, you said, we've got 7 restaurants. Some of our peers that we look to and say, that's our ambition, to be like restaurant chain X, have got 200 or 300 restaurants across and on every UK high street. They don't need PR for people to be aware of their brand. We all know them very, very well. So it's really important to us to share this story because not only are we proud of it and it's inspiring for us and for others, it's a really great way in PR. PR is a really great tool for us to start competing with those people at that top table before getting ahead of having 100 restaurants in the UK.
Love it. And let's just talk about what kind of advice you would give someone who's starting off on their journey.
I would say set yourself up for success by doing whatever it's important to you, identify that, and then whatever isn't, set that aside. So you buy yourself the maximum time to be successful. The important thing for me was that between our finances and the support of my family, we bought time. We made a plan that if Pasta Evangelists had grown even quicker, that plan would differently. We wouldn't have had to move house and downsize house. But we made all these plans and said, this is what we'll do.
Right.
We'll go this far. And you know what? If it hadn't worked out, so be it. And at some point, you'd have to, I think, probably know, the next thing would be know what your exit point is. Don't get yourself to the misery, risk of being foreclosed, not being able to pay the rent, because you're not going to be able to be successful if you've got these other drags on your time. You've got to set yourself up and accept that, for most, I've been, I think, unusual that this is my first attempt at a startup and it's been successful. That is not the normal picture. It normally takes like 1, 2, 3 attempts, and they might not be off the bounce. If you try something, it doesn't work, you might need recovery time. Your finances might need recovery time. You might need to go and work for somebody else. You might need a while before the next idea and energy comes to you. But I would say have a clear plan of how you're going to make it work for the longest amount of time that you need. But then if that doesn't work out, don't double down on it and make yourself a bankrupt, homeless, whatever else. It's just, I think people set out too high an expectations on themselves at times. The worst thing that will have happened if you've had a go and it doesn't work out is, well, at least you've had a go. A lot of people will respect you for that. You'll have learned an amazing number of lessons, but you'll be much better set up for when you next want to have a go, whether that's get up the following day, as some of these guys have, with amazing energy to keep coming back and saying no after time, or I'll take a break, 6 months, I'll go traveling, I'll go to a job for 2 years for somebody else, and the opportunity will come to me again. What strikes me in the 2020s is we're all going to be working a lot longer than the generation or two above us. Yeah. You can see that as there's a long time before we reach retirement and have our time our own. But I would make 2 observations. Like, firstly, it makes it even more important to seize the moment, because if you're going to have a 50 or 60 year career, for goodness sake, make sure you enjoy it.
Yes.
Wait until retirement, start enjoying your life. When you're old and can't take I don't have the energy, enjoy it now. So do grasp the moment. But the other thing is that there's plenty of time and plenty of opportunity to find what it is we're going to excel at and what we can develop, because we haven't got to pick one career and just build our pension in one business for 20 years and retire. These are the opportunities presented to us. So grasp it.
Yeah. And, you've been through this journey for now 8 years almost. Now, let's talk about what do you do to stay physically fit? running such a big operation?
COVID was a great eye-opener on that. Health has been really important to me from quite early in my career because I'm a relatively active guy. I played rugby, as I was talking about my rugby, and I played rugby not to a great standard, but when I was at school and university. 2 years into my career, I used to walk up to the tube and I had a really shallow hill, like a 200-metre hill, to walk up to the tube station. 2.5 years into my career, I found myself out of breath walking up the top of this hill. I thought, that is a sorry state of affairs at 25. At that point, I joined a gym. So the fitness has become, and as I went from being a consultant to being on at the stock exchange, where my hours are a bit more predictable, a bit more control on my own, the gym became a daily commitment. COVID was a really interesting moment that has really a pivotal moment in my exercise career, though, because when COVID hit, we decided as a family that we were going to avoid public transport. Public transport in London was still very busy, full of people the key workers who need to still get around. But clearly this thing was rife amongst that community, and frankly amongst medical workers, the people most exposed to it. So we decided as a family that we were not going to be on public transport. I had to still be there supporting and running our business because it was still going, thank goodness. So I had no choice but to run into work. There was no other option. So I started running to work in COVID. It was only about 3 miles where I was going at the time, so it wasn't too much of a burden. So I started doing that, and now, although our office is now a 5.5 mile run, I know it exactly because my app tracks me every day, but I run into the office 3 days a week. For me, the reason I started doing it and stuck to it is that it's just efficient. It combines the exercise and the commute. So finding time for these things when you're running a business and you're doing things socially, when you've got your commitments to your family, where am I going to find my time to do my exercise? In that becomes quite tricky. So that's been the trick for me is, well, if I'm commuting and running at the same time, it's almost free time. And eventually it is almost free time because you get fast enough that it doesn't take you any longer to run. London is not actually that big a place, you realise, when you start running around. Yeah. So there are plenty of journeys I can make in London where it's actually as quick to run as to go and walk, get on the tube, change, get delayed, find yourself in the wrong place, etc.
Absolutely. And how do you stay mentally fit?
Mentally fit. Maybe chatting to the team over lunch. I started a relatively new habit, having lunch. I think it's something we should really impose as a food business. Actually, almost make it a rule. Don't have a lot of rules. It's not really on brand and on mission, but I think we should start. I think we should all stop for lunch. We're in a food business, so I think it's really important as a group anyway that you start talking to each other not about your kind of transactional work needs, but as a food business, I think we should start. But something I've started doing is I sit and eat my lunch at the communal table. Even if it's 10 minutes, even if I'm out of kilter, like today I will be out of kilter at anybody's lunch because I'll be eating lunch later after we finished this session, but I'll still sit there and maybe somebody else will come and talk to me and I'll discover something about the team and we'll connect to that. Those connections that aren't about, have you solved this data question for me? Have you done this action for me? Are so valuable that that's really valuable. The other thing I've been doing for a while, it's a really more interesting mental and slightly different mental challenge for me. My strength, as I've talked about, the thing my go-to thing is analytics and data and numbers.
Right.
I started on a family holiday a couple of years ago, learning Italian through the Duolingo language app.
Yes.
And I work for an Italian business. It's definitely a long-term commitment. Why not learn the language? I visit Italy a lot professionally as well as a holiday. Why not learn a bit of a language? I'm not a natural gifted linguist, so I'm still on that journey, still learning, but getting better. But now I find I can sit in the back of a cab in Italy and have some kind of conversation with the driver about what I do in Italian. So it's got somewhere. I can, when we went to Rome as a family, I could talk to the locals, but to be honest, then they just reply back in English because they obviously have much better English. But that's an interesting little stimulating thing that I'm doing when I am commuting on the trains. That's what I'm doing, rather than, again, buying the time to do something that isn't straight into my email as I get on the train in the morning. I'm doing something else before I go into that moment.
Definitely. Chris, great having you today. That's a wrap for today. That's a pod. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you very much.